The first cemetery in what is now Jonesville was called the Union Grove Cemetery. It is unknown as to when it was started or if it had any affiliation with the Methodist Church, which was built in 1826. One would guess, however, based on a 1799 stone move from Union Grove Cemetery to the new Jonesville Cemetery, that it began around 1800. We know there were about 250 monuments or graves in the Union Grove, and based on the care of early cemeteries, it might have looked like this. Consider the location of the Jonesville Hotel, the Jonesville Academy, and the Methodist Church in this early drawing. The Union Grove was located in the general area of what is now Dyer Drive on the west side of today's Main Street. Why was Jonesville Cemetery founded in 1864 when Jonesville already had the Union Grove Cemetery? Did it have something to do with the appearance of the Union Grove Cemetery compared to the potential of the Jonesville look? Let's consider two possibilities. The new cemetery was designed in the Victorian tradition of a park-like setting with paths and ponds, winding roads, magnificent trees, and hills. The location of the Union Grove Cemetery did not offer that setting. The Union Grove Cemetery was in the way of new development on what is now called Main Street. Consider the following speculation. In 1854, the former Jonesville Methodist Church was moved across the street to the west side to become a girls' dormitory at the height of enrollment of the Jonesville Academy. Rochas Kennedy, the founder of the Academy, an influential member of the Methodist Church and a businessman, a local and state politician, joined 5 others to close the Union Grove Cemetery and to move it to the new Jonesville Cemetery. Once Union Grove was moved, there was space for possible expansion of the Academy, although student population began to decline between 1854 and 1864, which was the date of the opening of the Jonesville Cemetery, or the development of new homes or businesses on Main Street. Before moving on to question number 2, we need to know something about the religious life in Jonesville. The first church to be built in what is now Jonesville was the Methodist Church in 1826. It does not look like a church now because it became a girls' dormitory in 1854 when it was moved across the street on the west side near the Jonesville Academy. Today it is a residence. Back on the eastern side of Main Street is the larger 1854 Methodist Church. Most Jonesville residents who attended church probably attended this one. As Jonesville Cemetery was a community cemetery, probably most of the early interments involved Methodists, but we can't forget the Episcopalians. In 1882, a second, smaller, Episcopal church began and closed in 1963, when the congregation merged with another church in Round Lake. This former church is now a residence. Okay, here's the question. Why did these 6 Methodists form a non-denominational cemetery instead of a church-run one? Founders probably did not want to add to the responsibilities of the Methodist Church, although the back of the church property does connect to the cemetery down this road, which becomes known as the Pastoral Walk when you enter the cemetery. Kennedy was involved in the New York State Assembly in 1849 and as town supervisor in 1842 to 44 and again in 1857, and probably wanted to keep a separation between his active involvement in the community and government. but we are really guessing on this one. There is no evidence that the Union Grove Cemetery was affiliated with a Methodist church. Perhaps the thinking was Union Grove had successfully operated without being connected to a church. Why not keep the cemetery non-denominational so all residents could feel welcome in the new cemetery? The Roches-Kennedy family plot on Greenwood Avenue, which is now called the High Road, contains a large center monument and 6 headstones, including one for Roches-Kennedy. One is immediately struck by the difference in quality of these stones and the color of the center monument. Why do the colors not match? It is unclear when, but years later, according to John Shearer, town historian, some Kennedy relatives or descendants probably placed the more modern stone there out of respect to honor their famous relative. Today, it is rare for such an event to occur. Normally, the final headstone and/or monument is placed soon after the person's passing. Here we see a drawing on one of the 3 copies of the original 1864 map. It shows the center monument surrounded by a fence and a grieving woman with head down on the fence. But as the question implies, there is no such monument in the Jonesville Cemetery. Why then is it on the original map? The map was enhanced with color and with an idealized image. Besides, at the time of the drawing of the map, there were no monuments in the new cemetery, and the cemetery probably had fields of high grass on them. A practical question must be answered concerning the future of the cemetery when all property has been sold and no new income is realized. Unlike a religiously affiliated cemetery which is supported by the faith community, the not-for-profit cemetery must have a rainy day fund by New York state law. Under law, 10% of the income from the sale of property must be placed in a rainy day, or better known as the Permanent Maintenance Fund. Jonesville trustees have insisted that 50% or more of the income must be placed in the fund. The New York State Auditor said of the Jonesville Cemetery Association, "Jonesville Cemetery serves as a model for your community, with a proactive board who has shown great concern in both managing Jonesville Cemetery and planning for its care in perpetuity." Hey, let's hear it for Jonesville! If all of the rainy day funds, however, are expended in taking care of the cemetery grounds over time, it becomes the responsibility of town government to assume control and care of the historic cemetery. Here we see a picture of present-day Dyer Drive, which was once the location of part of the Union Grove Cemetery. The houses to the left and right were built after the cemetery was removed in 1864. Consider what happened. The decision was made to remove over 250 remains and monuments from this area by horse and wagon and take them to the new cemetery. One can only imagine that all stones did not make the journey, perhaps because they had fallen over or were covered up. So the question concerns the stones that did not make the journey. There are several answers to the question as to why some of the stones are now used as walkways on these properties. Answer number 3 suggests that it was not unusual for people to use fallen stones for these purposes. Although this seems strange, one only has to go to the internet and discover that you can buy old tombstones today for your backyard. One wonders how these internet tombstones were obtained, as there are individuals who rob cemeteries of loose stones and sell them. As the present-day cemetery is running out of space, one wonders why the association never purchased the vacant area to the east of the cemetery years ago. The answer is the association tried to pay the back taxes to obtain the property, but a developer beat the association to it and the housing development was built. There were stipulations, however, concerning a 50-foot buffer between the back of the houses and the beginning of the cemetery property. One can see the chain link fence built by the developer to separate the housing development and the cemetery. When you enter the Longkill entrance to this cemetery, you drive down into the cemetery because the present Longkill Road is much higher. Why is this? Originally, Longkill Road was much lower than it is today. In this picture, one can see a building, perhaps the early blacksmith shop, down lower than Main Street. So the answer is the road was raised probably because of the early stream which might flood the road at times. Today, the stream is only a trickle. Who decided where the flagpole was to be placed in the cemetery in its present strategic position overlooking the flats? It is the story of one brother, Lusk Boswell, honoring his younger brother, Merle, who had died in World War II. Lusk picked the spot and paid for the flagpole. Today, this is the location of the Jonesville Veterans Memorial. The Draper Mausoleum is located at the curve in the back of the cemetery. Why is it there? Note how the mausoleum rests on a hill. Before the cemetery established a rule against mausoleums, the Draper family installed one. Additional land had to be purchased and the ground built up to support the structure. One of the major challenges with such a structure is the upkeep of it after family members have all passed or forgotten about it. The association immediately decided that it did not wish to have potential repair costs in the future for such structures. Instead, the association has agreed to columbariums, which have several chambers for the burial of cremains instead of interments in the ground. Today's requirement concerning a 3 to 5 foot deep cement foundation under all monuments did not exist in previous days. That's the reason for fallen stones in the cemetery. Natural forces tend to win out over time. However, the association has made a commitment to restoring as many of these fallen stones as physically possible. If you walk across the top of the cemetery, you will eventually come upon the Alice Lappin's single stone on a large lot. Alice is the only person interred here after her family removed the center monument to another cemetery when the sister moved to Schenectady. The association has chosen not to sell the property as the modern stones would not be consistent in appearance to the other stones on the high road. However, the association did choose to honor Alice with a single stone on the lot. There are 10 markers or numbered monuments throughout the cemetery which were used in deeds to show the location of early property. Marker number 3 is 3 to 4 feet below road level, as the road level was raised over the years. One can see how the road drops off at the curve and how the footstones are well below the road level. We hope you have enjoyed learning about various aspects of the Jonesville Cemetery through a series of commonly asked questions.